What is your role when disasters like tornadoes occur?
It's so great, first of all, to be healthy, right?
Yes.
Commissioner Melissa Dennis. We're at OK Be Healthy. Thank you to Jacqueline Bourne for opening up her shop. She has Joel and Jonah over there helping her sons. And what a beautiful spot this is.
Great place. It's a great place.
And it's a great question because so much chaos ensues right after a disaster like that, Melissa. As District 1 County Commissioner, I mean, the storm came through the heart of your district. What is your role in that?
As a county commissioner, we have an emergency management department. But as a role as county commissioner, we need to make sure first and foremost that our crews are out clearing roads, making anything safe. We have to, that's the main focus, is the immediate safety. And that is what, as a county commissioner, I put my guys out, our employees out, we determine what roads need to be closed, if any. We determine what needs to be blocked off, if anything. And then what I do as a county commissioner, just so there's not a lot of confusion, which there always is, I wait until my emergency management director tells me what to do, honestly. Because if I'm out doing what I think I should do, and he's got someone out doing what I think I should be doing, it's just nothing but a cluster. And so I immediately go to my emergency management director and I say, Chad, his name is Chad Larman, what do you need from me? And I let him guide us through what we need to do, because like I said, it's already chaotic, and if we start getting out there and doing things that other people already have that role of doing, then you're just making it more confusing.
So it was very clear the first thing as commissioner, it's what government really was set up to do. It's to provide for the safety of the constituents, which for you, Melissa, in District 1, is your constituent base, do you consider being Pottawatomie County as a whole or in your district? And number two in that, what did that entail on the night of the disaster for you to make sure people were safe? What did you do?
Well, I've never, since day one that I became a commissioner, have I ever thought of just my district. I never have. In every decision I make, it's Pottawatomie County. That includes the outskirts of town. That includes District 2 constituents, District 3, and it includes anyone within the city limits, because they are rightfully in Pottawatomie County. So any decision I have ever made, I put the county's best interest at heart.
That night, I take you back to that night.
Yes.
You see this happening, you know it just came through. What did you do to make sure people were safe?
Well, all the low-lying power lines, we immediately got our barricades out and we drove through the city streets. And what was just very, very dangerous, we tried to block off as many roads as we could for the city, because at that point in time, even if they had their crews out, they needed help. And I knew that. I hadn't talked to anybody, but just from the disaster of Kickapoo and all of that in there, I knew that they were going to need help. So we did that. Then we backed up, and there was a couple of areas in my district that needed to be blocked off as well, and we blocked those off too. So I sent the majority of my guys to the city area, and then a few out into the county, because like I said, we didn't have a lot of, we had damage, but not as much as what was here.
So you touched on then a plan. So the first thing you do is, okay, there's going to be things on the roads. We have to block off roads so people stay safe.
Yes.
Then you mentioned, then you sit back and you let your emergency management director tell you what to do. Well, that's because an emergency management director, Chad Larman, and we've talked to him on a number of occasions, he had a plan in place. So you just kind of stepped back and said, Chad, I'm here. You tell me what to do.
Absolutely. And he does. I have to say, Chad Larman and our emergency management department is one of the best in the state. They are really I get calls all the time from people complimenting them. And I'm not talking about patrons. I'm talking about other emergency management departments. They are very impressed with ours, and I'm very proud of it. We just started an emergency management department, and so we've never had one. I knew what it entailed, and it cost a lot of money to get one started up. And so, but when we hired Chad, I didn't have to call people and say, okay, tell us how to get started. Chad took that baton and ran with it, and he's done great.
Well, the testimony to Chad that I've heard just in the last couple of months, first of all, he was nominated as vice president from his peers for the state organization on one of their associational meetings. And then also, he told me, Melissa, that, I mean, it was like 75 plus organizations were on his phone within the hour, and many of them actually on the ground for him to support Pottawatomie County in this time of disaster, 1 hour after that tornado comes through.
That is correct. And we set up a command post out at the CPNs. They were very gracious enough to let us use their parking lot out there as our command post. And I was out there, and you wouldn't believe the amount of support from around the state that we received, which takes me back to, if I'm doing all of this that I think as a county commissioner I need to be doing, and then you've got Chad telling law enforcement or fire departments from other areas to do the same, it can be so confusing. But it's really a blessing to sit back and watch how many people show up to help and do whatever they need to do and stay as long as they need to stay. So I was very impressed with everybody in the state of Oklahoma that showed up, and I was also impressed with our emergency management director as well, and our department.
Yes, we have actually, through disasters, something to be very proud of as a community. And we've got more questions from our hostess, Jacqueline Bourne.
With natural frequent disasters taking down our power lines, is there an option to put the cables in the ground where it's safer?
Wow, that's actually a good question. For many years, riding bicycles under those electric lines, on the small Kickapoo.
Yes.
I remember that. What about that, Melissa?
Well, obviously the city's not my jurisdiction. I'm not over the city at all. There could be that option to bury those lines, but it's very expensive. And so my assumption is the fact that with the expense of what that would cost, that's probably why the city hasn't even went that route.
Yeah.
But it is an option. That is an option.
Yeah, I mean, when we start looking at construction plans and those kind of things, years in advance, the planning for those electrical lines has to take place.
Yes.
And also, as a citizen, it really blows your mind, and you can give us some perspective in your position, how expensive it really is to mess with any of those lines.
Yes. Yes and yes. Yes, let me give you just a little bit of kind of a little example. I couldn't begin to tell you the expense it is, but in a small example of our building out on Acme that we used to house in, we ran a very short fiber optic cable line from MacArthur to our building.
Yeah, which would have been about 200, 300 yards, maybe.
And it was 60,000, I believe.
Wait. About 300 yards. We'll give it 300 yards for that. Mm-hmm. You just said $60,000 just to run a fiber optic line?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And that, of course, would be a communication line that you needed to be able to handle at your office.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So we're talking probably tens of millions of dollars.
Yes.
In order to put lines underground.
Yes. Yes.
That's a lot of money, Jacqueline, and for the rest of us.
It's a lot of money.
For commissioners as well.
And,
okay, so
and when you've got the lines, and I know in disasters and things like this happen, that's when everybody wishes they were underground. But when it comes to actually doing it, it's a big ticket item.
That's a 50-year plan. I mean,
Yes.
that's a 50-year plan to get
Yes.
those things down.
Yes, yes.
Tough question, good question, and that's what we anticipate here at OK Be Healthy. Jacqueline Bourne with another question for us. Hit it.
With so much being done in the rebuild, where do finances come from?
Yes. Cleaning up after a disaster, Melissa, that's tough. And I know just from cleaning up our little pieces of property, it takes cash. Where does that money come from when we're all strapped? I mean, we hear our governments are strapped all the time. Something like this happens. How do we take care of that?
The money comes from you. And actually, your taxpayer dollars is what helps us. If it is not a state declared emergency, if it's not a federally declared emergency, I use force account, which is basically my employees, my money. That's all I have to use. That is all I have to use.
Okay, I did not understand what you just said. I use a force account.
They call it force account. It's not FEMA. It's not state. It's your own force account, which is basically you're forced to use your own labor. You're forced to use your own money.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what we use. This one was actually a federal declared emergency. Therefore, FEMA will pay 75%. I pay 25%, but of that 25%, since the state also declared it an emergency, they will pick up 12.5 of that 25%.
Okay.
That's all reimbursement. So you have to have the money up front to clean up.
Okay, so two things. Number one, you say you pay. You said Melissa Dennis pays, but that's not what you mean.
No.
Clarify that.
Well, every dime the county has is taxpayers' dollars. Every single dime the county has is taxpayers' dollars.
Okay.
So when I say I'm talking about,
Us.
yeah, you, everybody. What you put into your taxes, into when you buy gas, when you buy, all of that becomes to the county. Our portion comes to the county. That's all we have to work off of.
Okay.
So
Okay, now I'm going to go into some percentages. You said federal emergency, they move in, they will pick up 75%. The state comes in and says, okay, of your 25%, we'll pick up 12.5%.
Yes.
Which means 12.5% of this cost is the bill that the county government has to fill adjacently with the city government doing probably the same thing, I would think.
yes.
So of that 12.5% of the county's responsibility, is that in savings? Where is that hidden?
It's in my use. Well, it's not hidden. It's all transparent. Let's get that out
Whoops.
there. It's all transparent. We use our use tax.
Okay.
Our use tax is what we get. The 1 cent sales tax, I think we've talked about it before. The 1 cent sales tax is broken down to several entities.
Okay.
That road and bridge money that I get from the sales tax, that's what I have to use.
Gotcha.
The use tax that we have from having a sales tax, we use that as well if we don't have it in our local coffers. When I say local, I'm talking about District 1 coffers.
And just for clarification, the difference between sales tax and use tax, sales tax is what you and I pay when we pay for something, and there's a percentage over that's called sales tax, whether we buy ice cream or I buy a board. Use tax is when I am a contractor or I am a business or I am someone in our county who does not pay sales tax when we buy the product because we're going to use the product in order to construct something else. And then when we pay a use tax on those items that we buy without sales tax.
Yes.
It's kind of complicated.
It's very complicated.
But when we talk about use tax and sales tax, it's interesting.
Yes.
Because sometimes it just flies right over our
Yes.
head. But they're two different types of taxes.
They are. They're two different types of taxes, and you can't receive a use tax if you don't have a sales tax in your county. So
Right.
there are several counties that don't have a
sales
sales
tax.
tax.
Yeah.
Now, when I say that doesn't have a sales tax, I mean they don't have a county portion of a sales tax. The cities do, the state does, but they don't have a county portion. We do. It's 1 cent, 1.495. But
So it's 1.5 cents, Melissa.
well, yes, but we only get the 1 cent. The other 0.495 goes to the
schools.
teachers, the schools. Yes. So anyway, that money, you have to have money in your coffers to even.
So is that something that
started.
you as a commission have made a decision on in the past, that any of the use tax that comes in, we're going to set it aside, or this is how it's going to be used for times like this?
Yes, times like this, emergencies.
Is that how you paid for the administration building cash?
I was just fixing to say that is how this had been a vision for 8 years, and we had saved and saved and saved and put back and put back and put back, and still allowed ourselves to have a nest egg per se until we could afford to pay for that building cash, and we didn't have to do a bond or loan. We didn't do anything.
And let's not be mistaken as a community. We're looking at probably $100 million, if not more. This is me. I didn't talk to anybody about this, but I'm thinking as I look at the devastation and then I see devastation and how the federal government puts price tags on things. I mean, we're looking at devastation of $100 million in our area. That means we have to have in the county coffers close to 12 million ready to go in order to handle stuff like this. Again, it's Daniel. My numbers might be off a little bit, but that kind of puts it into perspective.
Yes.
Number one, we're very grateful that the federal government has stepped in. Number
Yes.
two, we're very grateful that Governor Stitt came down here and actually declared this an emergency area.
Yes.
But number three, we have to be cognizant of that for our city government, because they've got that same type of responsibility, and our county government, that this is what really, Melissa, you guys are here for.
Yes.
Is to protect us.
Yes, and another thing, when you use your reserves, what I'm going to call reserves that you've set back for stuff like this, when I use my sales tax money, my highway, that puts projects back on the back burner, because now I have had to use this money to clean up disaster. And I will get that reimbursed because it was federally and state declared a disaster, but I won't get it for probably 2 to 3 years. That's how long it takes the federal government to start reimbursing you. Because remember, everything I have to keep track of. I mean, employees, fuels, vehicles, time, every little bitty thing. And they have to audit that so they will know that I'm not, fibbing on my numbers. So I have to prove everything I put down.
And I want to say, I really like the way Melissa owns it and says I and mine and these, because I mean, you feel kind of like a parent, don't you? And you've got what, 45,000 kids out there, I'm being one of them, that you've got to try to take care of, and you really own it.
Well, here's the bottom line. If I do something I'm not supposed to be doing, it's not we going to jail. It's I'm going to jail. And so that's why I always say because I feel ultimately responsible for any decision I make. I never want to say we did this or we did that, because what if what I'm talking about, you say, don't include me in that. That was all on you. So, yeah, I say I a lot, but because I wear that on my shoulders. I just take that responsibility. I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure your tax dollars are spent right, wisely, and in times of disaster to do the right thing and not to take the federal money and go blow it. So
Well,
I do say aye a lot.
I, for one, appreciate somebody who's able to take responsibility like that, Melissa Dennis. Thank you very much. And we enjoy bringing this to you. If you have questions, you can send them directly to us. We'll ask your commissioner, Melissa Dennis, or Abby Thompson, or a new one pretty soon as well. So again, thank you to our hostess, Jacqueline
Yes.
Bourne,
Yes.
and Jonah and Joel over there,
Yeah,
her sons.
yeah.
It's been another great day at OK Be Healthy in your Pottawatomie County. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. I appreciate it.